Rockschool is made possible in part by the Digital Musical Instrument Division of Yamaha Music Corporation USA and its network of authorized dealers nationwide.
Does anybody know?
Charlie, pass me one of those picks again.
It's much too early for this, man.
No idea.
Soon.
Well, I guess he's going to be.
We're supposed to go to the town about to start.
The guys, what keys is that?
Hi, my name is Herbie Hancock, and this is Rockschool. Welcome back to Rockschool, the series that takes you behind the sounds to see how today's music is made and played. This perfectly balanced show deals with harmony. It's a fundamental law of nature that in order for people to make beautiful music together in any way whatsoever, there must be harmony. And if you think of harmony as purely a group vocal style, you're about to be enlightened. Any basic musical idea can be expressed in an almost infinite number of ways. Determining which particular sounds and notes complement each other is a form of harmony that can dramatically shape the personality and originality of your music. In this session of Rockschool, we'll work on some fundamentals of harmony that can open up your sound and make it richer. We'll also get a sample of sampling technology that lets you precisely reproduce any sound and play it back in octaves on a keyboard. Joining in with observations and insights, we'll hear from James Ingram, Michael McDonald, Andy Summers, and Tony Banks. And we'll also be treated to the harmonious tones of the Pointer Sisters and the Beach Boys. Right now, let's kick it off on a positive note with the Rockschool Band.
Hello and welcome back to Rockschool, the show that aims to give you ideas on playing in a band. In this session we'll be looking at orchestration, not just for keyboards but for the band as a whole. And we'll be showing you just what you can do with this machine here, a sampler.
We'll also be looking at vocal harmonies and arrangements with two of America's leading soul stars, James Ingram and ex-Doobie Brothers blue-eyed soul man, Michael McDonald.
So let's begin with orchestration. There are two main aspects to this: working out combinations of different sounds and seeing which go well together, and structuring your chords and melodies to suit these sounds. In other words, instrumental voices and chord voicings.
A chord voicing depends on the vertical placement of the notes and whether you double up or leave out any of these notes. Now take a look at this D7th chord. The voicing is the first, the fifth, the flattened seventh, major third, and the fifth. Now, with a clean sound, the harmony rings through. However, I've put a more sustained sound on the guitar and play the same chord. It sounds really messy. Now, with just a simple change of fingering, I can play a D5 or D power chord, which only consists of the first, the fifth, and the first again.
With synthesizers around, this question of voices and voicings becomes even more involved. Someone who's not afraid to experiment with big sounds and textures is Genesis keyboard player Tony Banks.
I like that effect sometimes. I think it works very well. I mean, a prime example was, again, on the last album, Home by the Sea. The guitar solo at the end is like, you know, I'm just playing, I mean, I'm making an incredible noise, really, of sort of just, there's this sound from the synclavier in it, which is going all the way through it, through a guitar solo, and poor Mike's trying to play on top of it, but I think it works. You've got that effect, you know, and it just sounds great, I think, in the context. You know, you really can't distinguish anything apart from this guitar that sort of soars out the middle of it all, and behind it, it's just like everything's going, all hell's breaking. I mean, it's supposed to be a sort of ghost story of the song, you know, so the idea was that everything was sort of coming at you.
In terms of sound these days, you've always got the option of sampling. Now you can record and store on disk a short extract of any sound and replay it later. By playing around with these samples, you can create an almost limitless catalogue of new sounds.
So, how does a sampler work? Well, probably the best way to describe it is a cross between a compact disc player and a computer. On a compact disc, the sound has been converted into digital information for storage. When played back, that information is reconverted into a near-perfect sound reproduction of the original. A sampler works in a similar sort of way.
Samplers don't generate their own sounds, they simply reproduce sounds, so an obvious use is for imitation. Now, if the sound you want to imitate is short, stays at a constant pitch and loudness, like my alarm clock, you'll have no trouble in reproducing it. However, if it changes pitch, sustains at all, or involves any expression, then things start to get a bit complicated.
Firstly, when Alistair samples my lowest bass note, it sounds quite good. But if he plays it higher up, it sounds a bit like a banjo. This is rather like the effect you get when speeding up a tape recorder, so you'll have to take several samples and spread them over the whole range of the keyboard. Now, you could make a feature of this, as Art of Noise do, on the human voice. There is a small matter of inspiration and technique, of course. If Alistair really wants to get into sounding like a bass, he's got to think about slapping, pulling, bending, strumming, and picking. Try this, Al.
Okay. So, rather than stealing other people's sounds, why not steal your own? For instance, if you've got a sound you like on a synth which isn't touch sensitive, like this one, why not sample it? And using the expressive controls available in this sampler, give it more range and play it on a touch-sensitive keyboard like this one. Another good use for the sampler is to create your own sound using various synths linked together by MIDI, like this monster sound. Put it in the sampler. And immediately I've done away with the need to lug around hundreds of keyboards every time I want to use that sound. Also, I can use the sampler to organize my various programs and put them all together so that they're easier to get at. Like you may have noticed that the sounds I was demonstrating earlier were all grouped together on the same keyboard, so I could play them without changing program.
One way of creating space and tension in your music is by playing less notes, not more. Now, instead of playing big 6-note chords, why not let the bass player emphasize the root notes, and you can try and add on some harmonies at the top. For example, let's have a look at some harmonies you can play on the guitar. Here's a minor third, a fourth, a fifth, or a sixth. Now, I'm going to be using some of these ideas in the next piece, and notice that Alistair is using a sampler to play percussion.
As well as using partial chords to create a spacey sound, you can make a simple chord sound really interesting by choosing unusual bass notes. This leads us to one of the most exciting things in rock, the pedal note. That is creating tension by having one thing the same while something else changes. You could have the bass note staying the same and change the chords over the top, or you could have the chord staying the same and change the bass note underneath, as in the next example, A minor. With a D bass, it makes a D9 chord. With an F bass, it makes F major 7th. With a straight A, it makes an A minor chord. And with a C, it makes a C6 chord. In the next piece of music, we're going to start off by changing the bass note and having the guitar play a pedal. And in the second section, the bass will play the pedal and the chords will change over the top.
Pedal notes and a devastating use of space and dynamics are just some of the hallmarks of one of the world's most successful rock groups, The Police. We talked about arrangement ideas and live performance to Police guitarist Andy Summers.
Playing in stadiums is a fantastic experience because you can really use that space, and it actually works in the reverse way that you might think. You don't need to play huge and power chords and all that kind of thing. You can actually create a great sort of curve of space by making space in the music. And one of the things that we found was that, well, after a period of time of, playing constantly on tour, we found that we could actually improvise wholes at the same time together. We had kind of intuitive feeling. We'd all stop playing together, and one of the nice things was to see, we'd always have these crowds in America sort of chanting along with us, either singing the words or clapping or whatever. Or, waving their Andy T-shirts, whatever was happening. But we'd all stop at the same time, and they'd all sort of fall in the hole, and you could feel the gasp when you would stop, and they would all feel that moment. It was very exciting. It was more exciting than suddenly playing loud. But the use of dynamics and space in the music is so effective if one can have the discipline to do it. I like the openness of just the one harmonic instrument with bass and drums. It may be easier now with synthesizers, and a lot of synth players just play with one hand half the time, and it's a cleaner sound than actual piano. But I prefer the slightly more dangerous area of just guitar, bass, and drums, and trying to flesh that all out harmonically. I think if anything that I was successful at was doing that in a fairly convincing way with the Police, where we weren't just playing three-chord songs, but I would suggest entire areas of harmony, or sort of point the arrow in them towards them. One of the decisions fairly early on with the Police, once again, was okay, we can't have all those endless guitar solos, because they were such a characteristic of all those, late 60s, early 70s group. Let's try and get something more modern. So a lot of my lead playing went out the window, so I had to sort of come up with other things, sort of alternatives to the blues scale and all the kind of rock licks that go with it. So, jazz didn't seem quite right either. So I sort of ended up somewhere in the middle when the committee allowed me to play the odd solo. They don't find that discipline in themselves to be able to play very quietly and loud and really use dynamics, which is really, in the end, what music is about. It's a great awesome music, loud and soft.
Up till now, we've been combining simple parts to create more complex and extended chords as a group. Now let's look at the way you can use extended chords on individual instruments. On the bass guitar, for example, if you play harmonies close together, it's also very difficult to play. So, intervals of a fifth or above are much more effective. In fact, one of the favourite intervals for bass players are the major 10th and minor 10th. Here's a major 10th and the minor 10th.
One extended chord which piano players seem to love a lot is the 11th chord, presumably because we've got so many available fingers, and you'll probably have heard it a lot in soul ballads. A common voicing is to use the 1st and maybe the 5th in the left hand, and the 7th, 9th, and 11th. In the next piece, we'll be playing masses of 10ths and 11th chords.
You might have noticed just then that I was playing harmonics in two different ways. Now, in the last series, we looked at how you could play the artificial harmonics of open strings, and using this technique, you can build up chords like this. However, you are a bit tied to certain positions and notes. Now, there are a couple of techniques by which you can play the fretted notes as artificial harmonics. Now, one way is to tap firmly on the fingerboard an octave above the notes that you're fretting, a bit like this. Or another method would be to fret the note and then press lightly on the string an octave above, picking just behind the note, like this. Using this technique, it means you can build up whole chord sequences in harmonics.
We've been applying harmony to instruments, but of course harmony is important for vocals as well. Now, vocal harmonies can take many different forms depending on the style of music, the effect you're trying to create, or the number of singers in your band. And even the simplest form of harmony, just two vocals in parallel, can sound most distinctive. Remember the Everly Brothers?
I need you so that I could die. I love you so, and that is why whenever I want you, all I have to do is dream, dream, dream.
But perhaps more common in rock and pop vocal styles, from Motown to metal, from reggae to country and western, is 3- and 4-part harmonies, and they don't get much better than the Pointer Sisters.
It's not a fast move, but a
out more about harmonies and arrangements, we talked to two of the leading exponents of American soul rock, James Ingram and Michael McDonald, helped by singer Amy Holland and producer David Pack. They spoke first of all about the parallel three-part harmonies used on the Doobie Brothers classic, Minute by Minute.
Come on in, Amy.
My lovely wife, Amy.
Thank you, dear.
You know, in the chorus of that song, has the figure on the piano is which is basically the basic figure of the whole song. You know, it's where the song kind of sits. And so it was the most logical for the chorus to bring the lyric and together right there. You know, 2, 3, 4. Minute by minute by minute. We didn't rehearse this part. I'll be holding on. I'll be holding on. But basically, that's the idea. You know. But that's a rhythmic use of harmonies, you know. And there's other kinds, there's the oohs and the ahs, which are just more like blankets or, you know, pads behind things. They add dimension. They give you a sense of that there's something back there that instead of just what's going on in the forefront, you know, and add dimension to a record or an arrangement.
Padding is used to provide colour and depth behind the lead voice in much the same way as a sustained sound from a synth. And as with keyboards, you've got to consider the inversion of the chords the backing vocalist is singing to leave room for the lead voice and avoid a muddy sound. Just listen to Michael McDonald and friends.
See, that's very thick sounding, but a lot of times what you can do based on that theory of strings is instead of doing the parallel harmonies, something that they're that lateral and parallel, just change to a voicing more like something like that, which can sound a little strange at first. More like that, and just by moving that one interval out of the middle to the right or to the left, and just find a voicing that's pleasing that still fits the overall voicing of the song and everything. You'll find that sometimes when you put them down with the first layer, the 3 voices that'll sing these, they can sound very strange. The voices kind of rub and they're dissonant. And the minute you double them, all of a sudden they can become very beautiful. Because with violins, the reason they voice violins this way and the reason it works is with violins they have a natural resonant phasing quality when the 3 or more play together that the human voice doesn't have until you double it sometimes. Can you hit a... Can sound a little strange. That doubled will sound beautiful, you know. Trust me.
A slightly more complicated idea is that of pyramid harmonies, where separate voices build towards a unison peak somewhere in the song. This is a classic sound in rock. Just listen to this.
They're a lesson in harmony all by themselves. But in a moment, we'll hear what happens if you reverse the pyramid. Then stay tuned for the information on the great home study package that goes into much greater detail than a half-hour TV program possibly can. For Rock School, I'm Herbie Hancock saying, in the words of the Beach Boys, be true to your school.
What we did was instead of just singing straight 3 parts parallel the whole time, we staggered them. We used sort of that old techniques, or one of the techniques dating back to like at the hop, You know, that sort of ba, 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 where the voices come in at varying intervals. And that mixed up with some ideas from James of dynamics and doing a few turns here and there that were part of his style and part of Mike's style, and blending those elements together made something completely special. 1, 2, 3. I gave to you my heart and soul. Now I just need to let you know you're part of me that I just can't let go. Something like that. Something like that.
Hey, wait a minute. You just heard some pretty impressive playing. But you know, you don't learn to play in a group just from watching. It takes practice. If you really want to learn how to play, Rockschool can help. Give us a call. Tell us what instrument you play. We'll send you a video cassette and a 200-page player's guide to rock for just $29.90. It's the most in-depth study guide from serious rock musicians featuring some of the greatest rockers of our time. Whether you're into guitar, keyboards, drums, vocals, soloing, or playing in a group, we've got a video cassette and player's guide that contains hundreds of useful tips, photos, and easy-to-read charts. It's a complete guide to the secrets of rock music, equipment, effects, and rock styles, all from the music makers themselves. Call now. Have your credit card handy and call 1-800-451-7020 or send $29.90 plus $2.50 shipping to Rockschool, WNET, Box 68618, Indianapolis, Indiana. Be sure to tell us the instrument you play and whether you're a beginner or experienced player.
Rockschool is made possible in part by the Digital Musical Instrument Division of Yamaha Music Corporation USA and its network of authorized dealers nationwide.
Possible locally by strangers.
$500. Will he have to file a tax return? Find out Sunday at 5 on Tax Changes 88.
Richmond, Virginia, Channel 23.